My friends, I'm Ben, and today I want to talk to you about something almost all of us have faced: debt. I'm not talking about investment or home loans, but the spiral of debt, the kind that pulls you in quietly until one day you check your bank account and realize there's nothing left. I've been there, and I've met hundreds, maybe thousands of people in over 20 years of working in finance, smart, hardworking people still trapped by debt, not because they were foolish, not because they were lazy, but because they didn't understand the invisible rules of money. I remember a friend named Michael. He was an engineer with a good income, a small family, a new car, and a cozy home in the suburbs. Everything seemed perfect until his company downsized. 3 months later, he started using his credit card for living expenses. 6 months later, he borrowed more to pay off old debts. And within a year, he was drowning in over $60,000 of credit card debt. I met Michael again during a consultation. He looked at me, smiled sadly, and said, "Ben, I don't even know when I fell into this spiral. All I know is one day debt became my companion at every meal, every night's sleep, every breath." That sentence stayed with me because debt isn't just a number. It's a feeling of being trapped. If you're listening to me right now, maybe you felt it too. That sinking feeling when the phone rings, afraid it's a collector. That tightness in your chest when you check your bank balance. Or that silence when you can't tell anyone that you're fighting just to pay the bills. I understand. I've seen the tears, the sleepless nights, the disappointment in loved ones' eyes when they hear the word debt. And I want to tell you this: you are not alone, and you can break free. But to do that first, you must understand why people fall into debt. Here's something I've learned. No one chooses to be in debt. No one says, "I want to borrow more than I can afford." It starts small: a credit card, a student loan, a late bill, a gift for someone you love. And then it grows like a snowball. I call it the soft trap of money. Because it doesn't hit you like a storm, it sneaks in through small, repeated choices until you can't turn back. People often ask me, "Ben, why do smart, educated, stable people still end up in debt?" The answer is simple and painful. Because financial education isn't taught in school. We learn how to make money, but not how to live with it. No one tells us that emotions, not logic, drive 80% of our financial decisions. And no one warns us that when we use money to heal emotions, we're digging a hole with our own future. I once met a nurse named Linda, 42 years old. She told me, "I work so hard, but somehow every month my account goes back to zero." When I looked through her spending, I saw dozens of small purchases. Morning Starbucks, home decorations, online orders. It's just $20. She didn't realize those little things were quietly washing away her efforts. When I asked, "Why do you buy these things?" she smiled softly and said, "Because it makes me feel better after a long day." That's the first cause I'll share in the next part: emotional spending. One of the most powerful and common reasons millions of Americans fall into debt without noticing. But before we go deeper, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, if I lost all my income for 3 months, could I survive without borrowing? If your answer is, "I'm not sure," you're not alone. Over 60% of American adults are in the same position. And that's why this video isn't just about money. It's about freedom, about reclaiming control of your life, not to get rich overnight, but to stop living in fear. My friends, throughout my years as a financial advisor, I've learned that debt doesn't start with numbers. It starts with emotions. And when you begin to understand yourself, how you spend, react to fear, or love money, only then can you change. Today, I want to take you through that journey step by step to see that not all debt comes from lack of money. Most comes from lack of awareness, control, and self-protection. So wait, if you've ever asked yourself, "Why do I work hard but never escape debt? Why does the more I pay, the more it grows? Or why do I feel so tired every time I think about money?" Then this video is for you. Join me, Ben, someone who's been in debt, lost, and risen again, as we uncover the 5 real causes that pull people into the spiral of debt. And more importantly, how you can stay free for good. Are you ready? Then let's begin. My friends, I want to begin this part with a simple, honest question. Have you ever bought something just because you were in a bad mood? Maybe a shirt, a gadget, or even a trip you knew you didn't need, but you wanted it, just to feel a little better. If you nodded, you're not alone. Because in more than 20 years of working with hundreds of people, from fresh graduates to parents raising kids to those nearing retirement, I've realized that emotional spending is one of the most common reasons people fall into debt. I remember a client named Rachel, 34 years old, who worked in media. She earned around $80 a year, not bad at all, but every month her account was nearly empty before her next paycheck. One day she came to me smiling awkwardly. "Ben, I don't understand why I never have savings. I don't buy anything big. I just like to reward myself after a long day. I reviewed her statements. After every stressful meeting, she'd buy something online. After every argument with her boyfriend, she'd order takeout. And every weekend, she'd treat herself to a spa day or a new purse. She wasn't spending to live, she was spending to feel alive. And you know what? It's emotion, not logic, that drives most of our financial behavior. Neuroscientists have found that when we shop, our brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter that gives us a brief sense of happiness. It makes us feel light or excited, as if we've regained control of our lives. But a few hours later, dopamine fades and we feel empty again. So we buy more. It's a cycle: emotion, spending, guilt, then spending again to forget the guilt. I once asked Rachel, when was the last time you truly felt happy, not because of something you bought, but because of something you lived? She stayed silent for a long time, then said softly, maybe when I used to cook dinner with my mom. Now I just order food delivery. That answer stayed with me. Because when people lose connection with real emotions, they try to fill that emptiness with possessions. And that's why the more they buy, the emptier they feel. I know modern life isn't easy. We face work pressure, social media, and the fake image of success others post every day. And sometimes you just want to tell yourself, I deserve this. But the problem is, deserving doesn't have to mean spending. The things that bring lasting happiness, health, peace, good relationships can't be bought with a credit card. I remember the first time I truly understood this. That year, I was under heavy stress myself. Whenever I felt tired, I'd go buy something, a pair of shoes, a watch, just to feel like I was doing fine. Until one day, I looked at a pile of unopened boxes in my closet and asked myself, am I buying joy or am I buying emptiness wrapped in pretty paper? That question changed how I saw money. I started pausing before every purchase. I'd ask myself, do I really need this, or am I just trying to escape a feeling? If it was the latter, I'd close the app, take a walk, or call a friend. 90% of the time, the urge to buy disappeared. Emotional spending is a reflex, like snacking when you're sad or watching movies late to escape anxiety. It's not a flaw, it's a signal that you're tired, lonely, or craving control. And instead of trying to fix it with shopping, you need to listen to it. I often tell my students, money isn't pain relief. If you use it to soothe emotional wounds, you'll only make them deeper. If you're listening to me right now and this feels familiar, try this small exercise. Next time you want to buy something you don't really need, write down why. Not the reason you think, but the emotion you feel. Sad, lonely, stressed, disappointed, self-rewarding. You'll be surprised to find that most of our purchases aren't about the item, they're about the emptiness inside. Another client of mine, Tom, 57 years old, once said, Ben, I've worked for 35 years, but every time I feel sad, I buy something. Now my house is full of stuff, but my heart still feels empty. I looked at him and said, Tom, what you're looking for isn't in a store, it's inside you. 3 months later, Tom started keeping a journal of his spending and emotions. He discovered he spent the most when he felt lonely, especially after his son moved away for college. When he started replacing shopping with phone calls to his son or exercising, his finances improved dramatically. He didn't just reduce debt, he found peace. My friends, financial freedom doesn't begin with how much you earn, it begins with understanding why you spend. If you can control your emotions, you can control your wallet. And if you can control your wallet, you can control your life. So next time you reach for your card, ask yourself, am I buying joy or am I buying a temporary escape? If you pause long enough to hear the answer, you've already won half the battle. In the next part, I'll share the second cause, something even more dangerous than emotional spending, using bad debt to buy short-term happiness, a sweet trap almost everyone has fallen into at least once. Let's keep going, because understanding this might save you from years of silent financial pain. My friends, there's a truth I've seen over and over again in all my years working in finance. People never borrow money because they like debt. They borrow because they want to feel okay in the moment. A new car to prove success, a vacation to escape stress, an expensive gift to save a relationship, a swipe of a credit card to fill an empty feeling. And then a few months later, the bill arrives, bringing the real price of those brief moments of comfort. I once met a man named Jason, 45 years old, an electrical technician. He came to me owing over $85,000, mostly consumer debt. When I asked her, Jason, what happened? He was quiet for a moment, then said softly, I just didn't want my wife and kids to feel deprived. After a period of unemployment, he wanted to make it up to them. Every birthday, every holiday, he swiped his card, buying gifts, trips, fancy dinners. In his mind, it all made sense. I'll pay it back later once things get better. But later never came. That's the trap of bad debt. It makes you feel like you're doing something good while slowly stealing your freedom. So what is bad debt? It's debt that doesn't create value or income. It only serves temporary emotions. For example, buying a luxury car to impress others, borrowing for vacations, overspending on lifestyle, or using credit cards to numb sadness. Good debt, on the other hand, is borrowing to grow, investing in education, starting a business, or buying assets that appreciate over time. But in life, the line between good and bad debt is razor thin. Because people rarely borrow with logic. They borrow with hope. I once had a friend, Emily, 28 years old, smart, ambitious, working in marketing. She wanted to upgrade her image, so she bought a new car, renovated her apartment, got a new laptop and designer bags, all on credit. She told me, "Ben, this is an investment in my career. I need to look successful before I actually succeed." Sounds reasonable, doesn't it? But within a year, she was $40,000 in debt. Her job was stressful, her income stagnant, and nearly half her paycheck went to interest payments. I looked at her and said, "You're not investing in your career, Emily. You're investing in other people's perception of you." She stayed silent, then burst into tears. We live in a time where validation can be bought with borrowed money. You can look successful with just one swipe, but it never lasts. Because when you use debt to buy happiness, you're only renting a moment and paying for it with your future. Once during a seminar, I asked the audience, if you lost all your credit cards today, would you still feel at peace? Half the room raised their hand and said no. I smiled and said, then debt is living and you're just surviving. The truth is, bad debt always starts innocently. A small loan, a temporary borrow, a comforting thought, "I deserve this." It doesn't seem wrong today. But over the years, it grows into a weight you can't see, only feel every time your bank email arrives. I remember one middle-aged man after a session told me, "Ben, I don't feel any happier, even though I've bought everything I ever wanted." I looked at him and said, "That's because you used money to buy feelings, not value." I'm not saying you should never borrow. No, borrowing when used right is one of the most powerful tools for growth. I just want you to understand that borrowing to live better is not the same as borrowing to look better. One gives you energy, the other drains it. Imagine this. One person borrows to learn new skills, doubles their income. Another borrows to buy a luxury car and worries about the monthly payment. Both are in debt, but only one is moving forward. I once did a small experiment with my students. I asked them, how would you feel if tomorrow all your debt disappeared, not a single payment left? The answers weren't, "I'd be richer." They were, "I could finally breathe." And that's exactly what bad debt steals: mental freedom. It makes you work not for passion, but for obligation. When you're in debt, you lose choice. You take extra shifts. You stay silent when the boss is unfair. You say yes to things you don't want just to make the next payment. That's not living, that's renting your freedom. But here's the good news: you can break free. And it starts with one small shift in mindset. Before borrowing, ask yourself, how long will what I'm buying truly hold its value? If the answer is less than 6 months, don't borrow. If it's less than a year, think twice. If it's a lifetime and it helps you grow, that might be good debt. I always tell my students to write one line before signing any loan agreement. I'm not borrowing money to buy happiness, because real happiness has no price. My friends, I know we all have weak moments, times when we just want to feel comfortable. But remember this: comfort bought with debt is a short nap and a long nightmare. Don't let your future pay for your present emotions. If you're listening to me right now and carrying some debt, forgive yourself. It doesn't define you. What matters is understanding why you owe. Because once you understand, you can change. In the next part, I'll share the third cause, something small, yet the root of why millions never escape debt. Not understanding your own cash flow. Believe me, once you know where your money goes, your life will change. I'll see you in the next part. My friends, there's an old saying I love: you can't manage what you don't understand. And that's truer for money than for anything else. I've met so many hardworking people earning good, even above average incomes, and yet they're still in debt. Not because they're careless, not because they don't try, but because they don't know exactly where their money goes. I remember a client named Sarah, 38, an elementary school teacher. She earned about $60 a year, enough for a comfortable life. But when I asked how much she had in savings, she gave a sad smile. "Not much, Ben, maybe 500. I asked, "So how much do you spend each month?" She paused and said, "I'm not sure, maybe $4,000 or $5,000 or more. I don't really track it." We went through her bank statements together. What we found shocked us both. In just 30 days, she had over 120 transactions, coffee takeout, Netflix, Amazon, clothes, gas, phone bills, school supplies. Each one small, but together more than $700. She looked at the summary and whispered, "Oh my God, I've never seen it this clearly." And that, my friends, is the problem. Most of us don't actually spend more than others, we just spend without knowing. Money leaves quietly: $5 coffees, $9 subscriptions, one-click buy now moments that make us feel in control. But at the end of the month, we ask, where did it all go? According to CNBC, over 60% of Americans can't list their monthly expenses accurately. That means 6 out of 10 people have no idea where their money's flowing. And when you don't know your cash flow, you can't control it. It's like driving in fog. You might be heading in the right direction or straight off a cliff. I call it financial blindness. It doesn't hurt, it's not obvious, but it's incredibly dangerous. Because it makes you think you're fine while you're quietly sliding downhill. Someone who doesn't understand their cash flow is like a person pouring water into a leaky bucket. No matter how much they work, it keeps draining out. I've been there myself. When I was younger, I thought earning more money was enough. I didn't track my spending. I didn't budget. I told myself, I know what I'm doing. Until one day I checked my statements and realized I'd spent over $1, $200 on takeout in a single month. I remember the feeling clearly, part shock, part embarrassment, part awakening. Because I realized the problem wasn't income, it was awareness. I want you to imagine this. Think of every dollar you earn as a drop of water flowing into a pond. If you don't know where the leaks are, that pond will never fill up. That's why the first step to escaping debt isn't earning more. It's understanding where your money goes. When I coach my students, I give them one simple but powerful exercise. I call it the 30-minute cash flow Sunday. Just 30 minutes every Sunday. Sit down, open your banking app, and write down, Timera, how much came in this week? How much went out? Well, how much remains? No fancy spreadsheets. Just look at the numbers, feel them. Because clarity creates awareness. And awareness creates change. After 3 weeks, almost every student tells me the same thing. Ben, I've never felt so peaceful about money. They didn't win the lottery. They didn't get a raise. They just knew where they stood. Once an older gentleman came to me and said, Ben, I've worked for 40 years and I still don't know where my money goes. I feel like a stranger to my own wallet. I asked, if money were your best friend, would you treat it that way? He laughed and said, no, I'd probably ask it every day how it's doing. We laughed, but inside that laugh was a deep truth. When you care about your money will care about you. Not understanding your cash flow is the root of every debt spiral. Because when you don't know where you are, you can't know when you've gone off track. And when you don't know what's draining your wallet, you start blaming everything else, the economy, your job, luck, instead of looking within. But trust me, after just 3 weeks of tracking, something amazing happens. You begin to notice. Aquanin, you don't need 4 streaming subscriptions. Hapunar, you can cook instead of ordering every night. Tonat, you're overpaying for insurance. Those little things, they're the escape route. My friends, if you're listening right now, I want you to take a few minutes tonight just to look at your real numbers. No judgment, no guilt, just understanding. Because when you know what you earn, what you spend, and what's left, you gain the power to change your life. Financial freedom doesn't begin with money. It begins with awareness. And that awareness starts with one simple act. Know where your money goes. In the next part, I'll talk about the 4th cause, the silent wallet drainer for millions of people. Relying too much on credit cards. It's a powerful tool, but if you don't know how to use it, it becomes the sweetest trap you'll ever fall into. I'll see you in the next part. My friends, I want you to imagine this. You walk into a store, pick up a $100 shirt. No need to open your wallet. No need to check your balance. Just a quick swipe. In less than 5 seconds, that shirt is yours. You smile, feeling light and free. But in reality, you just signed a small contract with your future. A contract most people never read carefully. I still remember the first day I got my credit card. They told me, Ben, this is the symbol of financial freedom. And I believed it. I felt grown up, accepted by society. I shopped, dined out, booked flights, all with a single swipe. But a few months later, I got my first bill and I was stunned. I had spent 30% more than my income. And that's when I entered the same spiral millions of Americans are stuck in, the minimum payment trap. Maybe you've been there too. When the bill arrives, you see the line. Minimum payment due 75. And you think, great, I only need to pay 75 lives. But no, you're just paying for the privilege of staying in debt. The rest, the unpaid balance, quietly grows with interest day by day, month by month. Did you know that with an average credit card interest rate of about 21% in the US, If you owe $5,000 and only make minimum payments, it can take over 10 years to pay off. And you'll end up paying around $12,000, double the original amount. That's how banks profit from human impatience. I remember a man named Paul, 52 years old, who worked in the service industry. He had 3 credit cards with a total debt of about $18,000. He said, that's from Ben, I just pay the minimum every month. I thought that was fine. I pulled out a calculator and showed him. If he kept doing that, it would take him 17 years to pay it off. And he'd pay over $27,000 in interest alone. He stared at me and said, I'm working for the bank, not my family. That line stuck with me. Credit cards are brilliantly designed and dangerously so. They numb the pain of spending. When you pay with cash, you see the money leave your hand. But when you swipe, you feel ownership, not loss. That's why people spend 12–18% more when using credit cards compared to cash. It's like eating caramel candy sweet at first, but toothache later. I once spoke with a young man named Kevin, 24 years old, fresh out of college, excited about building his credit score. He said, Ben, I've got 4 cards. I maxed out 2, but I pay the minimum, so I'm good. I smiled and asked, Kevin, do you know how much you're paying in interest each month? He replied, I've never calculated it. When we added it up, it was nearly $200 a month just to keep his debt alive. I told him, you're working 2 days every month to buy back the freedom you already sold. I'm not saying credit cards are evil. In fact, when used wisely, they're a great tool. They build credit history, offer rewards and travel perks. But the problem is, most of us don't use credit cards. Credit cards use us. You'll know that's happening when you don't remember how many cards you have. You only pay the minimum each month. How cute, you use cards to cover emergencies. In Marmot, you feel anxious when the bill arrives. If even one of those sounds familiar, it's time to take back control. I teach my students a simple principle I call 3 no's, 1 yes. 1. Don't use a card for anything you can't pay off within 30 days. 2. Don't open new cards just for rewards. 3. Don't swipe to feel okay. And the 1 yes. Use your card as a tool, not a crutch. Every time you swipe, remember it's not your money, it's borrowed. And you'll repay it with time, effort, and peace of mind. I once asked an older woman, Mrs. Green, 68 years old, if you could go back, what would you change about how you used money? She smiled gently and said, I'd learned to say no to myself sooner. I asked, why? She replied, because every time I said yes to something I didn't need, I was saying no to my own freedom. That simple, powerful sentence stayed with me. My friends, credit cards aren't bad. But when you let them become an extension of your emotions, they'll slowly lead you away from freedom. And freedom isn't just about money, it's the ability to sleep well, breathe easily, and not fear tomorrow. So try this small step. Pick 1 card, pay it off, cut it up, and see how light your heart feels. You don't need to cut all your card, just your dependency. Because once you stop being controlled by credit, something magical happens. You start living with real money, not debt. In the next part, I'll talk about the 5th cause, the one that traps even disciplined people who don't overspend: not having an emergency fund. A single event, job loss, illness, a broken car can collapse an entire financial plan. And I'll show you how to build your first layer of financial armor to protect yourself. I'll see you in the next part. My friends, there's something I've learned after more than 20 years in personal finance. Not every storm comes from mistakes, many come from lack of preparation. I once met a man named Robert, 56, a truck driver. He lived with discipline all his life, never overspent, avoided credit cards, worked hard. He said, Ben, I'm not afraid of debt because I stay far away from it. But one day, Robert slipped on the job, broke his leg, and had to rest for 3 months. During those 3 months, income stopped, but bills didn't. Rent, insurance, medication, groceries, they all arrived right on time. After 6 weeks, he started using credit cards to get by. After 3 months, he was $9,000 in debt. When he told me that story, his eyes were heavy. I didn't live lavishly, Ben, he said. I just lived. And that, my friends, is why not having an emergency fund is one of the biggest reasons millions fall into debt without doing anything wrong. They don't borrow because they're reckless. They borrow because life happens. A broken car, a medical bill, a job loss, one event can break a family's balance. According to Bankrate's 2024 report, more than 57% of Americans don't have even $1,000 in cash for emergencies. That means a single accident, illness, or surprise bill can push them into debt. I call it the financial domino effect. One tile falls, income drops, and the whole row collapses. When you have no cushion, every small shock becomes a disaster. I remember one evening in a retirement finance class, a woman named Linda, 63, said something that silenced the room. She said, "I'm not afraid of illness, Ben. I'm afraid of hospital bills." Her husband had a heart attack in 2020. Insurance covered most of it, but they still owed over $6,000 out of pocket. They had no emergency fund, so they borrowed. Within 3 months, their credit card debt doubled, then tripled. "We finally paid it off," she said, "but it took nearly 3 years and countless sleepless nights." I looked around the class and said, "That's why an emergency fund isn't optional. It's your life safety fence. Without it, you're walking a tightrope, one gust of wind, and you fall." But here's the good news: building an emergency fund isn't hard. Starting is. Because most people think, "I'll save when I have extra." But the truth is, if you don't start when it's small, you'll never have extra. I once coached a young couple, Tom and Emily. They both worked earning around $5,000 a month. When I asked if they had an emergency fund, they laughed. "Ben, no way. We're still paying the mortgage." I said, "That's fine, just start with $50 a week." They did. Every week, $50 was automatically transferred into a separate account. At first, it felt insignificant. But after 6 months, they saw $1 or $200 sitting there, and that feeling changed everything. "Ben," they said, "for the first time, we feel safe. It's not much, but it's peace." I smiled. That's exactly what an emergency fund brings: peace, not just money. I want you to picture this. An emergency fund is like financial armor you wear every day without noticing. It can't stop the storm, but it keeps you from getting soaked. It won't make you rich, but it keeps you from getting poor. And the best part, anyone can build it, even starting with $10, $20, or $50 a week. Because the goal isn't how much, it's consistency. I teach my students a simple rule, the 3-6 rule. Save enough to cover 3 to 6 months of expenses. If your monthly expenses are $1,000, aim for $3,000, then work towards $6,000. And once you hit that number, you'll realize every emergency feels smaller because you have a cushion to fall on. I know some of you might be thinking, "Ben, I'm already struggling with debt. How can I save?" I understand truly. But you don't have to be debt-free to protect yourself. Start with a tiny step. If you earn $1,000, save $10. If you earn $3,000, save $30, because every dollar saved today erases a worry tomorrow. I remember another man, Mr. Allen, 72. He used to be an engineer, now retired. One day, his water heater broke. The replacement cost $1,500. I asked, "Do you regret taking money out of your emergency fund?" He smiled and said, "On the contrary, I'm happy because I didn't have to borrow." That made me think, an emergency fund isn't just a bank account, it's pride. Pride that you're taking care of your future self. My friends, if there's one thing I want you to do right after watching this video, start your emergency fund today. It doesn't have to be much. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to begin. Open a separate account and name it My Peace Fund. And every time you transfer money into it, tell yourself, "I'm rebuilding my freedom." Because true wealth isn't having more money. It's not being afraid of tomorrow. In the final part, I'll show you how to combine all 5 lessons into one solid financial system from the roots to the top. It won't just be a summary, it'll be your roadmap to financial freedom starting today. My friends, if you've been with me from the start, you've probably realized something. Debt doesn't just come from money. It comes from how we live, how we think, and how we react to life. I want you to imagine this. Your financial life is like a living body. If emotions are the heart, spending is the hands. If cash flow is the bloodstream, credit cards are oxygen, and your emergency fund is the immune system. When one part weakens, the whole body falls out of balance. And the beautiful thing is you can heal it. No miracles needed, just understanding and action. When I was younger, I thought money was just a tool. Make more, spend freely, deal with it later. But then I went through a storm. I lost my job, lost my home, drowned in debt. I remember lying awake at night, staring at the ceiling, asking myself, how could someone who understands finance, end up here? The answer changed my life forever. I didn't live with money, I just used it. I didn't build a system, I kept patching holes. Financial freedom isn't earning more to spend more. It's knowing every dollar you have, every decision you make, and every emotion behind it. I realized that if you see yourself as a financial system to stay strong, you must align 5 key parts. 1, understand your emotions so you don't spend unconsciously. 2, know the difference between good and bad debt. Borrow only when it moves you forward. 3, track your cash flow so you know where you stand. 4, control your credit cards before they control you. 5, build your emergency fund to protect yourself when storms come. Together, these 5 form your financial immune system, helping you not just avoid debt, but live with peace and freedom. I remember a student named Mary, 49, an accountant. When she came to me, she had nearly $40,000 in credit card debt, no savings, and no hope. She said, "Ben, I've tried everything, but every time I make progress, the debt grows again." We started from the ground up, not with numbers, but awareness. Week 1, she simply wrote down every expense. Week 2, she cut small, unnecessary costs. Week 3, she built her first $100 emergency fund. After 6 months, she had paid off 30% of her debt and saved over $1,000. But what impressed me most wasn't the numbers. She said, Ben, I don't feel scared anymore when the phone rings. You see, freedom doesn't come from your wallet, it comes from your mind. I truly believe anyone can change. Because financial freedom isn't a destination, it's a journey. You don't need to move fast, just in the right direction. You don't need perfection, just progress. Remember, every time you say no to something meaningless, you're investing in your future. Every extra payment you make toward debt, you're reclaiming your freedom. Every $20 you add to your emergency fund, you're telling yourself, I matter. My life is worth protecting. If you ask me what's most important in personal finance, I'll say this. It's not formulas, it's awareness. You can read hundreds of books about money, but nothing changes until you say, I take responsibility for every dollar I touch. I've seen people with modest incomes live freely, and others with high salaries live trapped. Because freedom isn't measured in numbers, it's measured in peace of mind. I want you to imagine this. Tomorrow morning you wake up, no debt, no fear. You open your phone, see your small savings, your clear plan, and your quiet confidence that says, I'm on the right path. That feeling isn't far away. It starts with one small step today. My friends, I won't promise this journey is easy, but I promise it's worth it. Because you're not just paying off debt, you're learning how to live free again. When you control your money, you don't just save your wallet, you save your spirit. And when your mind is at peace, your life naturally becomes richer. Before we end, I want you to remember one quote I live by. Money never rules a grateful heart. If every dollar you earn reflects your effort, every dollar you keep shows your discipline, and every dollar you share expresses your kindness, then you're already richer than 90% of the world. So today, after this video ends, I want you to do just one thing. Write down 3 actions you'll take to change your finances. Maybe it's start tracking your spending weekly. Stop emotional shopping. Build your first emergency fund. And share your thoughts below, because your small story might inspire someone who's struggling just like you once did. I'm Ben, and I believe you don't need to be rich to live free. You just need awareness, understanding, and action. Thank you for being here, for listening, and for being ready to rebuild your financial life from the ground up. My friends, if you've watched this far, I know there's something powerful inside you, the will to change. And that's the first step toward financial freedom. I don't know where you are on this path. Maybe you're struggling with debt. Maybe you're worried about the future. Or maybe you just want to live with more peace. But remember, you're not alone. We've all stumbled, fallen, and felt tired because of money. What matters isn't how deep you've fallen. It's whether you're willing to rise. If you've learned even one small thing today, apply it just one step. Track your spending, start saving, or simply stop buying what you don't need. Every small step today builds a bigger tomorrow. And if you found this message helpful, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. Because maybe your one click could be the start of someone else's transformation. I'm Ben, and I believe you deserve a life not ruled by debt. A life of freedom, awareness, and peace. See you in the next video.